Hi guys. Okay, if you are watching this video, this is just a quick review on some things that we need to know that you have previously learned that you definitely need to know and understand in order to be successful in this chapter 2 for 4th grade. In 3rd grade, you did do a lot of learning about estimation and number theory. And before we begin, I want you to think about, what the purpose is. Why do we estimate? Who cares? Why do we actually spend time talking about estimation? And I'm hoping that you realize that there's a couple answers to that question, and that the first reason we estimate is because estimation makes sometimes a lot of math easier. And so when we estimate, we are taking a number and we are picking another number that it is closest to, like an easier number. So say we have the number 987, we would round that or move that number to be it's closer to 1,000. And 1,000 is a number that is easier to work with than 987 because there's lots of zeros in the place value, which makes it easier to add, subtract, or multiply. Another reason that we spend time estimating is because it's a great way to check to see if your answers are reasonable. So if I'm adding two numbers or subtracting or multiplying two numbers and I get an answer, and if I want to see like, well, did I do that right? Does my answer actually make sense? I can really quickly round those numbers and estimate and see if my answer is close to my estimation. If they're close to each other, then that would probably give me a clue or indicator that my answer is correct. And if they are not close, then that means my answer is not reasonable and I probably made a mistake somewhere and need to go check. In real life, estimation is something that you will do forever. It is something that you probably do daily. It could be small scale, it can be big scale, depending on what your job is, but it's something that we need to be able to do, and it's something that makes out in the real world, we don't always have to stop and we can't add exactly the numbers or multiply exactly the numbers. Sometimes it's hard to do those things in our head, and estimation makes that easier. So before we get into 4th grade, which in 4th grade we're going to find the sum, differences, products, and quotients, and we're also going to estimate to check to see if our answers are reasonable. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that we have a good understanding of how to estimate in rounding, so that way when we get to our 4th grade numbers, we have an easier transition. So first of all, if I am, really quickly, if I'm finding the sum, I'm hoping we realize, I know that that means that we are doing addition. If I'm finding the difference between two numbers, then I am subtracting. If I'm finding the product of two numbers, then I'm hoping that we realize that that means that I am multiplying. And the last one is if they ask for the quotient, then that means that I'm going to divide. Okay? So we will be doing all 4 of these in this chapter, and this is just the first part of this chapter. So a lot of this chapter involves all 4 operations, and we need to make sure that we are understanding what each of these words means. So we can estimate for all 4 of these. However, it looks different depending on what you are actually doing. All I'm going to do right now is just give you some numbers, and we're going to talk about the different place values that you can estimate to. So if I have the number, let's see, 3,492, okay? I'm hoping that we're realizing that this is a number that has 4 place values. We have the ones, tens, hundreds, and the thousands. However, that means that there are 3 ways that we can round this number. We never round to the nearest 1 because the ones is just, you can't round it to 2. A 2 is just 2 ones. I can't really round that. However, I could round this number to the nearest tens place, to the nearest hundreds, or I can round it to the nearest thousand. Typically, when rounding, the easiest place to round to is whatever the biggest place value is. If I round to the nearest thousand, because this is the biggest place value, that will give me the easiest number to work with mentally. If I have the number 40,346, my biggest place value is the 10,000. If I have the number 425, the biggest place value is the 100. If I have the number 69, the biggest place value is the tens. So what we're going to do right now is I just want to show you how in 4th grade, I think sometimes we've learned this little saying of like, oh, like 5 or above, give it a shove, 4 below, let it go. And I think that's more of a procedural way to understand rounding, and I want us to visually understand why we have 2 choices when we round and how we know which choice to round to. So if I'm going to look at this number, I'm going to start with the nearest tens place. If I'm rounding the nearest 10, I'm working with that place value. So in this case, I am working with that 9. That 9 is 90. So what I need to realize, and what I like to do to show my work is you can draw a number line, okay? On a number line, if I'm rounding the nearest 10, I know that I'm going to keep it at 9 tenths, or I can round that up. Now, the tricky part, actually, you know what? Just to make things easier, I'm going to change this number. Just to make life easier. Okay. I have 8 tenths. So I can either, I'm hoping you realize, keep it at 8 tenths, or I can round it up to 9 tenths. Here's the thing. When I'm looking at this place value, I'm only worrying about this number. So I'm going to call them anchors. On my number line, give 2 anchors. So the anchors are on either side. If I'm going to keep it, I'm going to say I could round it to 3,480 because 8 tenths is what it's at right now. Or I'm hoping that we can see I can round that up to 9 tenths, which would be 3,490. I'm either keeping it at 8 tenths or rounding it up to 90. Now, the next thing I need to decide is the halfway point. If I have 3,480, 3,490, what's halfway between 80 and 90? I'm hoping that we realize that that is 3,485 is halfway between. Now I'm going to plot this point. Where would 3,482 go on this number line? I'm hoping we would see it would be somewhere right about here, which would mean that if I'm looking at this number line, if I were going to round it, this right here is way closer to this side of the number line than it is to this side of the number line. So if I were going to round, I would pick 3,480. So if I were rounding to the nearest tens, I would choose 3,480 because 82 is closer to 80 than it is to 90. Okay. The next one I'm going to do is the nearest hundredths. Again, I can do that number line, but I'm now working with a different place value. I can pick my 2 anchors when I am rounding. So now, instead of working with that 82, I'm working with that 4 because that is the hundredths place and is worth 400. So when I'm rounding, I'm looking at the number 3,482. I'm either going to keep it at 400, so 3,000, I'm going to keep it at 400, or I can round it up to the next 100. The next 100 is 500. Okay? Now I'm looking at, I need to find my halfway point. Well, between 400 and 500, the halfway point will be 3,450. I have my number line. Now I need to plot where 3,482 would go. Well, I know that 82 is bigger. 482 would be closer up here. So this time I'm noticing that my number is actually closer to 500 than it would be to go all the way back to 400. So my answer here would be 3,500. Okay? I'm hoping actually, on pretest, I saw like some people when you were rounding, you were keeping like the next number. You would say 3,582. The purpose of estimation and rounding is that we are making any place value after into zeros because we are getting rid of those numbers. We're estimating and picking the closest one. So I know that I had 82 at the end of that number, but I'm not using that anymore because I'm rounding to make it in zeros. It's way easier to add if you have zeros than it is to add if you had that 82 still there. The last one's going to be 1,000. So again, I can make my number line. This time I'm looking at the biggest place value. So I'm looking at that 3,000. So if I'm looking at my anchor numbers, I either can keep it where it's at 3,000, or I can round it up to the next 1,000, which would be 4,000. I'm going to decide what my halfway point is. My halfway point between 3,000 and 4,000 is 3,500. Now, I'm going to plot that number. I have 3,482. Well, I know 482 is a little bit less than 500, so I'm going to put that dot right there. Again, just looking at this red dot isn't quite to the halfway point, so I'm going to be rounding it to 3,000. 482 is closer to that 3,000 than it would be to 4,000. Okay, now I want us to look at all of these, and I want us to see the difference depending on when we round. If I'm rounding the nearest tens, I only have 1 0 to work with. If I'm rounding the nearest 100, I have 2 zeros, and if I'm working with the nearest 1,000, I have 3 zeros. Obviously, if I really wanted to get, if I were adding or something and I wanted to get like the closest to the actual answer, I would round the nearest tens. because look at, this is only 2 away from the original number. That would be a really close estimate. This one is only 80, or no, it's only like 20 away, 18 away from the actual answer. However, this one is 482 away from the actual answer. So the farther up you go in place value, the farther up you round, the further away you're going to be from your actual number. However, this number is way easier to work with or add in your head in less, rather than adding this number. So it depends on what you want to do, what you would pick to round to. Typically, they'll tell you what you want, they want you to round to. But if you ever get to choose, if it's like, oh, just round, and you're like, well, which place value do I round to? I almost always just go with the biggest place value. It's easier, it's faster, and the purpose of estimation is to work with really easy, fast numbers. So if we round to whatever the biggest place value is, that will give us the easiest answer. All right, now on your notebook, I'm going to give you 3 numbers, or 1 number, and I want you to, actually I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you a number, and I want you to round it. So I'll give you the number 5,736. I want you to round it 3 ways. I want you to round it the nearest 10, the nearest 100, and the nearest 1,000. However, part of being in 4th grade is showing and understanding and explaining your work. So for each one, even if you can look at it and you just know what to round to, I want you to challenge yourself by making a number line, because that's you showing me your thinking so that I know that it makes sense. So if your notebook should look just like this page. If you would like to, I'm going to make like a line for myself to write it, but I'm also going to make 3 number lines. And remember, you need anchors. So this one's the nearest 10. These should be hundreds, and this should be thousands. And you're going to need a halfway point. And I want you to pause it, and I want you to round this number to the nearest 10, 100, 1,000, but I also want you to try to show me what your number lines would look like. If you're not sure what to do, then you can listen, and maybe after you watch the first one, press pause and see if you can try the other 2. So pause your video if you want to try it, and then press play when you're ready. Okay, so if I'm rounding the nearest 10, I'm looking here, and that would be that 3. So I'm either going to keep it at 30, or I'm going to round it up to the next 10, which would be 40. So I'm either going to keep it at 30 or round it to 40. Now here's the thing, though. I can't forget about my 5,700, my 5,700. Okay, so I have to plot this number. Oh, wait, I want to figure out my halfway point. So in between 30 and 40 would be 35. Okay, now I'm going to plot my number. Oh, I have 5,736. Well, I know that's right after 35. So that's right there. Now, if that's where my number actually is, I can see on my number line visually that this number is closer to 5,740. So then I would round this number up. Okay, and that goes along with just looking at place value. If I'm looking at this 3, this in the tens place, and I'm looking to the ones, I'm noticing that 36 is closer to 40 than it would be to 30, so that would make me round it up. Okay, press pause if you want to try the next one on your own. The next one is the hundredths place. So now, I am in the hundreds, and I have 700. So I am either going to keep it at 700, or I can move it up to 800. But don't forget, I still have that 5,000. I still have that 5,000. Halfway between 700 and 800 is 750. So now I need to plot this number. I have 5,736. Well, I know that 36 is less than 50. So I'm going to put it like right about there. And I'm looking and I'm noticing that this number would actually be closer to 5,700. And again, if I'm looking at my hundreds place, I have 700s. Well, I only have 3 tens, or I only have 36. 36 isn't that close to the next 100. 36 is closer to 700 than 800. So that's another indicator that I would keep it and I wouldn't round up. Last one is the nearest 1,000. For my thousands place, I have 5,000. So I either can keep it at the 5,000, or I can round it up to 6,000. And again, I need to figure out my midway point. Well, between 5,000 and 6,000 is 5,500. Okay, now I'm going to plot this 5,736. Well, that would be up here somewhere. So again, I can visually see that I would round this number up to 6,000. And I also can check, because if I'm just looking at place value, again, if I have 5,000 and I have the rest of the number as 736, I know 736 is closer to the next 1,000 than it would be to being at 0, so I would have to round that up to 6,000, okay? Now, when you're done with this video, the next thing that we're going to be doing in class is using this background knowledge we have on rounding and estimating to add, subtract, multiply, and then also divide numbers. And so we can use our best estimates and rounding to check to see if our answers are reasonable. So when you are done, you can put your Chromebook away, put your headphones away, and put your notebook back in your desk. Okay? Bye, guys.